Hi. This is called It's No Longer a Game. It's 5 p.m, so it's time. Time for the briefing. Unless it's a weekend when they take place at 4, for reasons I can't quite fathom, but I'm prepared to ignore. Standing 3 aside, a podium apiece, the politician between the scientists to announce the deceased. Worst craftwork tribute ever. We've carried out X many thousands of tests, as if that were meaningful data. But the tests done as dictated by test kits we had, so that won't help us manage this later. I'm willing them on, hoping beyond hope that they'll rise and step up to the plate. But each day they manage to fail once again, increasing my concern for our fate. Johnson, Hancock and Gove taking turns, all looking like scared little boys, desperate to get to the end of their slot lest their cover gets blown amidst the noise. Rushing to end each briefing, survival the only goal. Getting through it, the only measure of success, then retreating away from the proles. Every successfully evaded point that you see as some mark of success erodes even further our weak trust in you, which serves to exacerbate this mess. Will you apologise, Minister, to the people who stand in harm's way, without the protection that should keep them safe, but who stand unprotected today? On day 1, you couldn't be held responsible. But the first time you stood before the nation and said it had all been sorted, then it's on you now, whatever the duration. You didn't answer that way because it was true. You answered that way to deflect blame. That's the game you usually play, but this is no longer a game. People want to trust you. They need to. They need to know that you've got this. But day by day, trust is slipping away and you're stepping ever closer to the abyss. When you lie, people die. And they die in your name. When your policies are tailored to protect your lies, more people die because this is no longer a game. Unable to admit to the problems we face, else the lies will soon start to unwind. But they're really beginning to look rather thin, and we know what we're likely to find. People don't have the PPE. What are you doing? Today alone we've shipped 50 million. A meaningless answer to a different question that diminishes you in the eyes of every civilian. Hancock said PPE was sorted again and again to make all the questioning stop. But you cannot deny now that each time he lied, and he should be next in line for the drop. You stand up and boast that there's still spare capacity, but frankly I'm appalled that you have the audacity. As daily we read of the care homes in tragedy, people denied hospital, evidence of your mendacity. In any other environment this would be gaslighting. People come to you with serious questions and concerns. You dismiss them and explain that it's no longer a problem. They shouldn't believe what they've learned. Our journalists asking multiple questions each and every time it's their turn, which allows the answers to be evaded, and I'm praying to God they soon learn. There for our delectation each and every day are the failings in our democracy and the games that our politicians and media play. Here's a question I'd like you to ask, and I'd like you to ask it right now. Why are you not sharing deaths in the community as soon as the data allows? The scientists debasing themselves every day to bring credibility to the politicians. Well, the politicians are delighted in every way to be able to share their inquisition. These experts have clearly been trained to play your little media game. Media training, discussion framing, not answering questions, their aim. It's like the worst bits of The Apprentice, which is all of The Apprentice, by the way. The lack of sincerity in their voices would be laughable were there not such a price to pay. Did they miss the faking sincerity module of their media training? When Gove and Patel speak, I can feel my trust further draining. We've no idea how many have this thing now, nor how many have had it before. We simply don't have the information we need and no plan for how we get more. I'm scared, because it doesn't seem true that decisions are being based on what's best for the nation or our NHS, but on what supports the lies already told throughout this unrest. Take it on the chin, let it move through us all, which, absent in vaccine or treatment regime, is where we might end up. For that to be your first option is frankly obscene. We need herd immunity. Sage advice indeed. But that can't be a policy aim, as we don't even know if immunity is guaranteed, so we'd lose hundreds of thousands in vain. This nation led its government in this time of disaster, when the nation deserves to be led by a qualified master, where we should have been closing down and people confined to their digs. Instead, we had the Cheltenham Festival and Stereophonics gigs. You can't take action yet, not enough of you are dying. We have to fill the hospitals before we actually start trying. Our breakout came later, which meant that our action should have come quicker. But we waited and waited and dithered with guidance, and sadly now people are sicker. 10,000 dead. But that isn't all. The ONS stats suggest double. The fact that they're not sharing community deaths suggests that we're in for far more trouble. Test, test and test again is the WHO advice. Test, isolate and trace contacts, but we've decided to roll our own dice. So it turns out that when it comes to the crunch and the need for strong leadership is clear, that there'll be vagueness, weak advice and a lack of clear rules, which is literally killing us here. Stay 2 meters apart, said a 3 wise men or women true, who aren't standing 2 meters apart. Do as we say, not as we do. I'm really struggling to believe that under a right-wing Tory Prime Minister, I'm wishing for him to be more draconian in the rules he needs to administer. To see how the world is responding to this and then plough your own furrow could be brave. But if it's based on nothing more than covering your own backs, you'll be sending thousands more to their graves. The financial assistance that's been offered sounded great, but under scrutiny looks decidedly less so. And millions quickly lost jobs and will suffer as companies prefer to sack than furlough. Loans might help in some cases, but it relies on companies putting their future profits ahead of their employees' present. So beware of false prophets. Millionaire bosses throwing staff to the wolves and cocking a snook to protesters, then taking the money the government gives and handing it straight to investors. How worrying it is to realise that personal circumstance leaves you prone. Newly self-employed, well, I'm sorry to say that there's no help for you. You're on your own. I'm lucky. I know I'll be all right. But there's millions not as lucky as I. And the government just says, sorry, you don't fit our model. Compassionate conservatism, eh? It's hard to deny. All of the assumptions that underlie our economic model laid bare and found to be lacking when push comes to shove, as there's really not much substance there. How can they do it? We hear people cry when the toilet roll hoarders arrive. Yet the hoarding of money is seen as a virtue while others find it hard to survive. There are millions now in genuine need, but the distribution of resources is so skewed, and help from those who have millions doesn't seem to be guaranteed. Hoarders they are, just of money, not food. It won't stop me shaking hands, Johnson proclaims with a smile. Just as Trump stares directly at a solar eclipse, how ridiculous, contemptible and juvenile. What you say really matters, you appalling man. People's behaviour will be led by your words. So this blustering fool that you choose to portray is dangerous, obscene and absurd. A lying newspaper columnist in charge, seasoned at playing the buffoon. So out of his depth as he blusters around, believing himself to be immune. So little trust in our Minister Prime, who's lied his way right to the pinnacle, that if he'd faked his positive test, nobody would be surprised. We're that cynical. Years of demonising experts and truth are suddenly shown in high contrast, with the urgent requirement for people to trust and respond for as long as this lasts. Rejecting EU help as our doctors and nurses die on the altar of your Brexit myth. But the lack of plan B seems to suggest to me that you should step aside now forthwith. People are dying and dying alone, and that will live with us for generations to come. Your lies are enabling this shame to persist and for many more people to succumb. Illness or not, you Bullingdon chancer, you cannot escape this. You have questions to answer. So we're digging mass graves here in England, and there's no sign it's stopping just yet. So please let's support our key workers, and remember we're all in their debt. But the maddening, saddening, tragical truth, and the thing which should fill you with shame, is that you're too busy lying and spinning to see that it's sadly no longer a game. Thank you. Stay safe.